breaking down everyday workplace issues and diagnosing the hidden sickness, not just the obvious symptom. Our hosts, James and Kobe.
Did we lose a patient?
No, that's just my lunch.
Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm Kobe, he's James. So let's get started with a question. What is quiet quitting and why is it important to talk about?
Well, I have some thoughts on quiet quitting, and this is not a new phenomenon, really. If you're not familiar with the term quiet quitting, it really refers to what is in essence a work to rule. It's a rejection. It's classified as a rejection of hustle culture. The term was really popularized recently due to TikTok videos that went viral and have really become prominent among Gen Z. And the whole idea of quiet quitting is that for so long, we as employees have been expected to give and give and give. We're expected to give more time than we're paid for, more energy. It's the idea that if you do not go the extra mile for your employer, then you won't get those bonuses. You won't get the idea that we've normalized having to give our employers more than what we are receiving. Quiet quitting is saying, you know what? I've been paid to do a job. This is my job description. I'm going to do this job. Right? It's a tool that's been used for years by unions and contract negotiations under a different language of work to rule. Right? I'll share a quick story that both my parents are teachers or were teachers. They're both retired now. But I can remember talking with my mother because in Nova Scotia in the mid-90s, there was a number of teacher strikes. Doesn't matter the reasons and rationale. As a music teacher, she was always giving more than what she was technically required to do, right? Because it's her passion, teaching kids music, doing her choirs and Christmas concerts and, all of these events and, going early for band, staying late for choir. These things were normalized for her. But when the union was renegotiating contracts and trying to show just how much their members were doing for free, they asked people to just work to rule, which is you go to work at whatever time school starts, 8 o'clock, and you leave whenever school ends, right? The extracurriculars that teachers give the students for free needed to be removed to show the employer how much they were doing for free. This is the same philosophy of work to rule of quiet quitting, right? It's a rejection of the hustle culture, this unspoken expectation in the workplace that if you want to be successful, if you want to get the promotion or to get a raise, you have to work more hours. You have to volunteer for stuff. You have to constantly give and give and give in the hopes that your employer will drop you a breadcrumb.
I really think that you're really hitting the point when you say that this isn't a new thing. Because if you see articles about quiet quitting or you hear business owners talk about it, they're saying this is a Gen Z being weird, being Gen Z, and this is just a new thing, another thing that's going to blow over. But you're 100% right. Work to rule existed in the 90s. It existed way before the 90s.
Yes.
But this idea of it's a passive protest.
Yes.
It's I'm going to come in and just do the job to the letter and nothing more. And what's really and that's my form of protest. I'm still going to fulfill my obligations, but I'm not going to do anything more. And what's interesting, especially in like this in school context or even in other contexts of businesses, you realize how ineffective businesses or organizations run when people just do the things that they're paid to do.
Well, and that's
And
sorry.
and that is a real big aha moment. I think that we should all kind of take a moment to really think about.
It is, and I actually love I like this phenomenon. I think this is healthy for us as a society because if the only way that your business is going to maintain any type of profitability is by treating people as a commodity and squeezing every last drop of profitability out of them and then tossing them aside, you have a failed business model. Now, you have a profitable business model. Let's be clear. There are many large, very profitable companies that operate in this way. But if you look at the rise in unionization and in strikes over the last couple of years, there's not this rejection of the hustle culture, this rejection of the this unspoken rule that you have to constantly give and give and give and give doesn't hold up when companies post record profits while paying you absolute garbage, right? When there's that, well, it comes down to a lot of what we talk about in our trainings and in our coaching around the workplace culture hierarchy is about the idea that the expectations of the workplace need to be competitive, sufficient, and equitable. And this, to me, quiet quitting really, really hits the nail of things are not equitable. I am giving more and more, and you are taking more and more. There is not that sense that there's an equitable exchange of goods and services, right?
And I think that it is that unspoken expectation, like if we were thinking about it, wages haven't really gone up, much, especially when you consider inflation right now. But
Mm.
wages have really kind of plateaued in a lot of ways. Job descriptions in a lot of positions haven't been updated, but it's almost but year over year, the unspoken expectation to go above and beyond. To that it used to be success was if you did your job as written in your job description, that was you were a good employee.
Right.
But the expectations have increased while the job descriptions have remained pretty stagnant. And now it's like, well, good employees don't just do their job; they do more than their job. They do stuff without clocking in. They stay
Right.
late when they're not asked. They find other reasons to put in more time. And it's almost like pushing yourself to the breaking point is the minimum expectation on a lot of people in a lot of businesses.
You're absolutely right. And this is a societal problem. Like I know for myself growing up, like I my parents were adamant that all of us kids work as teenagers, from whether it's mowing lawns before at 14, 15, getting a paper route, which I hate it getting up early in the morning. But anyways, that's besides the point. Like they instilled in me their work ethic, which is a good thing. Having being able to understand the value of work is very important. But part of that work ethic that was instilled in me was also this same idea, that to be successful, I had to do more, right? Whether it was, picking up shifts when I was working, retail or working at McDonald's as a teenager, volunteering to go above and beyond, staying late to get things done. It didn't matter the environment. That was the expectation that was kind of ingrained in me by my parents, which in many respects is a very good thing. Where the breakdown happens is that the other half of that expectation is that there's this promise that is alluded to, that when you go above and beyond, you will be rewarded. When you go the extra mile and you show value, you will get the promotion, you will get the raise, you will be rewarded for your hard work. What that promise has been broken, and it has been repeatedly broken year after year after year after year, not in 2020, 2021, 2022, but for the last 20 years. This promise has been deteriorating as companies move to a less human-centric model, to a more workers are a commodity. Let's squeeze every ounce of productivity we can so that our shareholders are happy, right? When you as an employee know that you can be fired at any time in order for the stock price to get a 0.01 bump so that the shareholders can make a little bit of extra money, why would you continue to give more to a company that treats you that way?
And that really does, I think, speak to the heart of where the real problem is that this shift in expectation to being less human centric, to being above and beyond, is really the minimum. And that pushing yourself to kind of the breaking point is part of the course of employment now. This is kind of been building for a long time.
Yes.
And what we often talk about in a lot of our training is we talk about really, we kind of say this is actually the building to the Great Resignation. That and we use what we call the boiling frog analogy, where we kind of say that, or sorry, just what that is I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. It's the idea that if you put a frog in boiling water, the frog won't survive. It'll try to escape, and it will not be able to handle those conditions. But if you take a frog and you put it in temperate water and you slowly turn the heat up, the frog will adapt to its surroundings and be able to survive. And the idea that we as workers for generations have been the frogs in the water that started off temperate, but slowly with these higher expectations, with these, with it being treated as a commodity, the water started to increase in temperature over the years. And before we realized it, in 2020, we've been sitting in boiling water. And the thing is that when the pandemic hit, we were all pulled out of water at the same time, and we were allowed to cool down while we were home, working from home or whatever. But then things started to go back to normal somewhat, and the employers and the business were like, okay, everybody back in the pot, but they didn't turn the temperature down. It was still the hot water, and we are rejecting those boiling conditions that we were slowly acclimatized to.
Yeah, I love that analogy because I think it very clearly illustrates what is happening. And I just want to reiterate the last point that you made, that as soon as it was okay for people to go back to work, companies didn't change the factors of the workplace. They didn't look to how the expectations of the workforce have changed. They just said, all right, everybody back to the way it was. We want to get back to normal. Well, normal was busted.
Right.
Normal didn't work for people. Normal only worked for a very, very select few.
Usually those are the top.
Those at the top, right? Back to normal for many people meant back to poverty wages, back to high levels of stress and anxiety, back to toxic work environments, back to feeling like you're just a cog in the wheel, like you're a commodity. You're right. And why, let's think about that for a minute. Why would I want to put myself in that situation?
Well, and this is what we have been talking about kind of since the Great Resignation started to build some momentum as the term du jour, right?
Yeah.
The idea that, people were rejecting the boiling water conditions that they were expected to go back to. So they were looking for new jobs, and they were stepping back. But really, what the Great Resignation was, it was a rejection of the status quo of these conditions
Yes.
that you just described. And what we've been trying to say for the past year and a half or so is pay attention to this. This is not a flash in the pan. This is not going to go away. We can't unring this bell. People now realize how hot the water has been. And if we don't fix this problem, why this overt, obvious resignation, turnover, measurable, vacancies that we can easily see and measure, it's going to evolve into something a little bit harder to notice and
Right.
harder to manage and harder to fix. And we kind of dubbed it as it's going to go from the Great Resignation to the Great Disengagement. People are going to go back to work, and they're going to say, I have to have a job. I have to feed my family, but I'm just going
Exactly.
to intentionally be disengaged and do the bare minimum just to get by. And that's how I'm going to almost like make up for these horrible treatments that I have. I'll just do what the bare minimum is. I'm not pushing myself anymore.
Absolutely. It is an evolution of the Great Resignation. And I liked how you phrased that, because in many respects, the Great Resignation was people trying to find a better environment, right? People not wanting to go back into the boiling water and hoping that the grass is greener on the other side. Um, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it legitimately is. You can, buy. Uh, I mean, I've read countless stories of people who were stuck at a certain wage for years, and then as soon as they job hop, they're able, the new company doing the same job, they're making 25, 35% more an hour or a year. Sometimes the grass legitimately is greener, but sometimes it's not too. And at a certain point, people have to like we were saying, people will stop quitting and leaving. They will stop quitting and walking out the door because we need money to survive. Our entire society operates that way. When they stop quitting and leaving, if you haven't done anything to fix the factors of your workplace, they're going to start quitting and staying. And that is what quiet quitting is. It is people who have quit the job, but they stick around to collect a paycheck.
Right.
And that is it's a much more difficult problem to diagnose than people leaving. Because when you can see turnover rates, you can measure how many people have left the workplace. These are very tangible measurements, and you can find all kinds of statistics that will actually help you put a dollar figure on that. You can measure how much that is costing your company. It's very, very difficult to properly identify and verify quiet quitting or disengagement, which is largely very similar. I won't say they're the exact same.
Well, I would go as far to say that like this disengagement is when you have a low sense of enthusiasm and motivation to do your job. And I would actually say that quiet quitting is a form of disengagement. It's an intentional form of disengagement.
It's actively disengaged,
Yeah, it's
right?
choosing to be
It's
disengaged.
choosing to be disengaged.
Yeah,
It's not due to burnout or stress or all of the other factors.
complacency or whatever.
It's a conscious choice to be disengaged.
Right.
And I mean, that's an incredibly expensive problem to fix, and it's a huge problem already. If you look at, like, Gallup does fantastic research worldwide that talks about engagement levels. um I'm gonna get the statistic wrong right off the top of my head, but it's something along the lines of 19 to 21% of the global workforce is engaged at work. Only 19 to 21%, it's something in that range, is actively engaged at work. And that is terrifying statistic, because you want people in your workplace who want to be there. You want people in your workplace who are contributing their skills, who are helping to make your business better, who are going, I hate to use this term, but who are going above and beyond, but not because it's a hope and a prayer that you'll eventually do something nice for them as the employer, but it's because it's out of recognition that they're valued, that their contributions are valued, that they're respected, that they are inspired at work, that all of these things take place. I mean,
I think it's also important to just kind of also state that, like, I mean, we're kind of like villainizing the like evil corporate ivy, or like glass tower corner office in a sense, but largely a lot of this expectation placed on people is usually done at the supervisor and manager level. Why are can you do this without clocking in? Can you stay a little bit late?
yes.
And it's usually not an intentional situation from these people trying to squeeze everything out of it. Part of it, this is just the norm. This is what they have
Yes.
thought is the normal workplace, and that's why it's evolved, which is why it's such a systemic issue that's really kind of hard to that's going to take a big conscious effort to change. But I think what's important, and what the real answer is to some of this, is that you have to change. This isn't going to blow over. If you didn't learn your lesson with the Great Resignation, then you need to learn your lesson with quiet quitting, because it's just going to keep evolving and end up becoming so embedded into the workplace that it may require, it may bring the companies down. And only the companies that figure this out are going to be the ones that are going to be able to have the talent pools and have the customer engagement and have the productivity levels to survive hard times. And this is why, kind of answering the question that we asked at the beginning, what is it and why it's important? It is this passive protest of work to rule. And it's important to talk about because it's not new, it's not going anywhere, and it's a natural evolution of what we've experienced for generations. And it's something that we need to take seriously. And it needs to be intentional, because businesses are not necessarily trying to be villains here. It's just the systemic issues, the complacent cultures that have just kind of evolved over the same amount of time. But what you have to do is we have to stand up and take notice.
We have to stand up and take notice, and we have to address the factors of our workplaces. That if you want to address quiet quitting, if you think that this is a problem in your workplace, the way that you combat that is by addressing the factors of your workplace. And we've got lots of material that talks about that. Check out our YouTube channel and our knowledge suite for, you can do a search for 7x3. It'll give you a really good understanding of the expectations and the factors. However, I want to clarify or jump on a couple points that you made. You're right that I was in my rants, villainizing a little more than is strictly necessary, but I don't want to villainize businesses per se. I want to villainize our societal culture around work. I believe that we have an unhealthy relationship with work in our society, or an unhealthy expectation. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier of the broken promises. I don't blame businesses for making business decisions. I blame our society that encourages and rewards selfishness. A prime example is Loblaws. Not villainizing the company, but with Loblaws in 2022 and the first half of 2022, they posted a 30.1% increase in profits, which is massive. That money goes to the shareholders, because that's the way that our society rewards businesses that are people who take on the risk to start a business, right? Like there's a substantial amount of risk involved in starting the business. We know this as business owners, as starting our own business, and there needs to be recognition and valuation of that. Valuing people who will take that risk and create value to employ others and create value and blah, 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 and on and on. However, throughout the pandemic, we spent most of 2020 saying that our frontline workers are heroes, that our society would collapse without frontline workers, without frontline retail workers, frontline healthcare workers, frontline truckers. Our society can't operate without these people. We proved that, right? When the world went into lockdown, many people still had to go to work during a global pandemic because otherwise our society would cease to function in the way that it does currently. We put a lot of lip service to this, and some companies, Loblaws included, added a premium, and very publicly added a premium that they paid to their workforce as a thank you for keeping us going. As soon as our attention was diverted away from the pandemic, that benefit was removed. And not only was that benefit removed, but in removing that benefit, in the midst of massive inflation and moving towards a recession and stagnating wages, they've posted a 30% increase in their profits. Right? This is what I want to villainize. It's not the company that's at fault. It's the way that our society rewards these behaviors. We celebrate these things in many respects. We celebrate that shareholder profits are the most important thing, right? We have reinforced this. We have chosen this. As a society, I have, by the way that I vote, chosen these things. That's what I believe is wrong. That's what I hope we will see more of these workplace trends. Quiet quitting is not going away, and it's not going to be the last iteration of this either. Until we as a society begin to re-examine our relationship with work and the way that we reward greed, these things aren't going to go away. Your business, if you're experiencing these things, our entire business philosophy is that you can have a very profitable business and treat people with respect at the same time. That is completely 100% doable, achievable goal. That, in my mind, is where I would love to see our efforts as a society move towards. The acceptance that profit is good. Like businesses, you're in business to make a profit. That's not a bad thing. Profit is not a dirty word. It's not like, that's fine. I am fine with that. If I wasn't fine with that, I probably wouldn't have started my own business to make profit, right? But we also have to accept that there is a responsibility attached with this, that we have a responsibility to everybody to make sure that we are treating people with respect, that they are valued for who they are, and that they are valued for how they contribute.
Right. No, and I think that it is important to realize that largely at the end of the day, kind of the big takeaway is that treating workers like commodities and squeezing every little bit out of them just to raise your profits it is not the only way to operate business. You can have successful, sustainable, businesses, good market share, high competitiveness, and still treat employees like people, still, have a strong workplace culture, have a more human-centric way to work. And it's absolutely doable. It's just not the norm. And we have to be looking at better ways.
We have to normalize it. And
Absolutely.
I mean, I highlighted Loblaws because of that very specific situation of giving the bonus, taking that bonus away, and record-setting profits. But let's contrast that with, well, I mean, if you're talking retail, Costco is the natural company to contrast with, because Costco pays people exceptionally well in that, like, from a competitive standpoint within the industry, within the regions that they're in, they pay above market wages. There is a clear career path for people. Their company culture and the way people are treated is far more respectful of the individual, or more humanistic, if we want to use that term. And they are a very profitable company that treats people well, that pays people well, and that is in largely the same industry and situation as their competitors, right? Are they the most profitable company? No, but they are very profitable. They provide good service, and they treat people well. You can find examples in every industry of companies that are doing it well and are maintaining profitability. We just don't celebrate that enough. We need to normalize the human element.
Absolutely. All right. So I want to just kind of wrap this up and kind of summarize some of the key points that we talked about. Largely, that quiet quitting is something that is the evolution from the Great Resignation. Where the Great Resignation was about people quitting their jobs and leaving, quiet quitting is about people quitting their jobs and staying with their employer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a passive protest using work to rule in response to the unbroken or the broken unspoken agreement that if you push yourself and go above and beyond, you will be rewarded with the career path that you're looking for. And honestly, that we have been boiling in our jobs for decades, and now are realizing the water is too hot. And these are the reactions to that collective realization.
Absolutely. It's an individual response to a collective realization.
Right. All right. So that about does it for us. For a full archive of our podcasts and access to the video version hosted on our YouTube channel, visit our website at roman3.ca/podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
For more information on topics like these, don't forget to visit us at roman3.ca. Side effects of this podcast may include improved retention, high productivity, increased market share, employees breaking out in spontaneous dance, dry mouth, aversion to the sound of James's voice, desire to find a better podcast.